Good afternoon, and welcome to the third episode of the Straight Facts No Chaser podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Edwards, looking forward to sharing some really fun stuff with you today about paid family leave. Oh, good morning. There we go. Okay. So good afternoon and welcome to the third episode of the Straight Facts No Chaser podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Edwards, coming to you live from my boat, Nina Simone. We were hanging out yesterday, so I figured we keep up the same momentum. So today we'll be talking about paid family leave, a federal policy discussion. Just to give you a little bit of short background about me again, I am a family medicine physician in New Braunfels, Texas. Sort of got involved with paid sick leave when I was a resident back in New Jersey. We advocated successfully for paid sick leave for residents of East Orange, New Jersey. And the disclaimer that I always give is that the thoughts and opinions expressed on my show reflect my own personal knowledge base, beliefs, and research, and does not reflect the organizations that I'm affiliated with or employed by. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the comment box, either on Facebook or on Instagram. So I'm dedicating today's episode to 9 to 5, the National Association of Working Women. They were founded in 1973 in Boston, and they're dedicated to putting working women's issues on the public agenda. Some of the policies they've helped to create were the 1978 Pregnancy Discrimination Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1991, the Family Medical Leave Act, and the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. Because of the following policies, I was fortunate to spend a full 3 months at home with my son right after he was born, and I hope that the 2 babies that I delivered the night before last will have as much time at home with their moms as possible. So, like we said, straight facts, no chaser. Going to go ahead and jump into it now. So, in just talking about just some facts about unpaid leave, many workers, over half of them actually cut their leave short for economic reasons. Many parents can't even afford to take any time off work, whether paid or unpaid. And before the Federal Employee Paid Leave Act, which I'll discuss later, it had been 26 years since the national policy had been released around any type of leave from work. And before this, it was the Family Medical Leave Act. So let's talk about FMLA. So it is available up to for eligible employees, which is roughly about 60% of our current workforce, and it's up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for an employee to care for family members or themselves if needed. And it also offers protections when they come back to work so that they don't lose their job. Who qualifies? So employees that have worked at least 1,250 hours during the 12 months prior to the start of family leave. It applies to public agencies and private employers with more than 50 employees. Small employers are exempt, and even in covered work sites, there is a loophole where not all employees are eligible if the employer is not within 75 miles of where they're working. So since it's released, about 16 states have expanded on the family medical leave by either increasing the amount of time that is offered or what the leave is for. Some states even include adoption of a new child. When we start talking about paid leave, I think this is really important to just note, in half of the developed nations in the world, the majority of all paid leave is only that for maternity leave. A common misconception that's floated around paid family leave is that it's only for maternity leave, which we know is inaccurate. And a little known fact is that President Trump actually called for paid family leave in the 2020 State of the Union address, and he's the first Republican president to do so. So, according to research done by the Kaiser Family Foundation, because about 1/2 of the working population is female, this could really become an issue as women who are consistently seen to be primary caregivers continue to bear children, and as their family members, such as parents and grandparents, continue to age. So, as far as paternity leave facts, we should talk about our dads too. So about 2 million of U.S. fathers were stay-at-home dads back in 2012, and 9 out of 10 fathers only took about 10 days off for the birth or the adoption of a child. But we all know that longer paternity leaves are associated with increased father engagement and bonding that leads to improved health and developmental outcomes for children. Paternity leave can also reduce work family conflict for fathers, and when fathers take leave, it can increase employment and pay for mothers. So only certain bi-coastal states and cities, as you can imagine, have implemented their own paid leave requirements. Only 8 out of 50 states have paid family leave, 11 out of 50 states have paid sick leave, and 14 out of 50 states actually have any paid time off whatsoever. So we're still really behind the curve. So I'd like to bring up next the Federal Employee Paid Leave Act that was included in the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. This was bipartisan supported. It was to start October of 2020 for federal workers who've worked for the government for over 12 months. It allows 2.6 million workers to have any sort of leave, and so we'll talk about what that is in a moment. So this allows for new parents to collect a portion of their future child tax credits early and receive a smaller credit for the next 10 to 15 years. It does not provide any new source of funding for parents during leave, and it only covers leave for babies or newly adopted children under age 6. So it does not actually cover adoption for children over 6 or care for sick family members or personal medical problems. And it also does not guarantee that a person's job is protected when they come back from leave. To be honest with you, it seems like it really was only supported because there was no additional funding given. So when we start looking into some stats, I'm going to bring up the 2018 American Community Survey. The median income in the United States back in 2018 was about $61,000. And when we jump into sort of the breakdown in median savings of people in our country, the bottom 20% of earners had about $600 saved in their account. So let's stop there for a moment. So if you're someone who makes minimum wage and you have a child and you need to take time off of work and you have $600 saved, that is most likely not going to be enough to care for your family during that time. So that leads people to make really tough decisions. And if we contrast that to the top 10% of earners, they have about $62,000 saved in their account. So according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the average household spent about $42,000 last year on essential items alone. What are essential items? Housing, food, healthcare, and transportation. That means that the average household spent about $3,500 a month to live, not including discretionary spending. So obviously that is not enough. So I also want to bring up some mentions that I always hear when we start having the conversation about paid family leave, because a lot of people, particularly on the more conservative side, say, hey, this is a personal responsibility issue. This is not something that, you should really be paying for people for, they should have their own savings to be able to take care of themselves. So I love to comment on that because if you look at data from the 2018 study done by the Economic Policy Institute, after controlling for age, gender, education, and region, Black workers were still paid 16% less than white workers. So how do we catch up if we're already starting from a disadvantage? Decreased access to paid leave in minority communities, we're already starting there, and then less leave is available to Hispanics, less than whites and blacks, which is really important because I think what this basically says is that we don't have a level playing field. So when we start talking about the Personal Responsibility Act, when we are portion of this saying that, oh, hey, people should have more saved, how am I going to have more saved if I'm getting paid less already? I'll let that marinate for you. So the other thing is about training children when they're younger about financial responsibility. So research has shown time and time again that kids who have savings account in their names are not only 6 times more likely to go to college, but they're 4 times more likely to buy stocks by the time they're young adults. So I think financial literacy starts early, but I think that is only a part of it. And so, once someone is an adult, that whole personal responsibility aspect of it is not necessarily accurate if we're not starting from a level playing field. So productivity, as much as I would hate to quote Woody Allen with his nasty self, there's actually a really interesting quote that I think is really important that will have a point, I promise. So 80% of success in life, he said that 80% of success in life can be attributed to simply showing up. But as we start to talk about cut individual productivity by at least 1/3, and illness affects both the quantity and quality of work. And so what you find is that people might end up working slower than usual or having to repeat tasks, which end up costing the employer more in the long run. And in 2 articles in the Journal of the American Medical Association, they reported last year that depression set U.S. employers back $35 billion per year just in reduced performance at work, and that pain conditions such as arthritis, headaches, and back problems cost nearly $47 billion. So the question is, do we want to pay now or do we want to pay later? Because either way, we're going to pay for it if we're not allowing people to have paid sick leave. So the American Productivity Audit actually calculated that presenteeism costs more than $150 billion per year. So a central aim of presenteeism research is to identify cost-effective measures that companies can take to recover some of these options. Some of this, are like the employee health clinics that are on site, but I think that there should be a comment about how when you have a physician or a nurse practitioner or a PA or whoever who's employed by your employer, we have to really kind of take a look at, what are their objectives? Are their objectives to make sure that you have the highest quality care that you can have, or is it that you have the best outcome with staying at work? And so I think that does raise a flag, and I don't know if there's a lot of regulation about this. So some of my ideas about paid leave is that if we're not really going to consider paid leave for all workers, especially, depending on the election results in November, at a minimum, we need to make sure that no matter what color you are, you're getting paid the same amount. There's no way we can have this conversation about personal responsibility and what people ought to do if we're not actually going to make sure that they can keep up with the demand of how much essentials cost each month. That also includes increasing the minimum wage to $15 per hour. There's no way you can provide for your family, take off to have a baby, take care of a sick loved one with no paid family leave and you're making $8 an hour working at Sonic. It's not going to happen. I think the other option is keeping the same provisions for protection of employment through FMLA and extending it to the private sector and providing government subsidies for smaller businesses. I say that because if you have a small business and there are 2 employees and 1 owner, and you have 1 person who's out of work, that means less money is being made. And that means that employer may not have the money to actually pay for that. But if we're saying as a society, hey, this matters for when our workers are here to actually be able to be at their best, be at 100% so that they can make the most money, I do think that's an avenue that our government could actually step in and help with. Another option that I'm sure most people won't like, especially if you're a business owner, but it has to be brought up, is that we increase the payroll and unemployment taxes that companies pay to cover this as sort of a type of unemployment possibly, so that businesses don't have to pay for it directly out of pocket. The most recent change to the tax code was done by the current administration through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which decreased taxes in multiple tax brackets. So with that being said, good luck getting additional paid family leave with that. But I think we should also, bring this into reevaluating how we spend money for end-of-life care. If there is someone who isn't able to take off of work or get paid leave, some states like New York have actually allowed family members to be paid for providing in-home care. That saves money, that improves outcomes, but the last time that this was brought up on a national scale, there was a bunch of criticism about it being death panels. I remember reading blog posts about elderly people actually storming Capitol Hill saying, hey, they're trying to kill us old people. And I don't think that's accurate. I think that with anything, you can reevaluate, you can sort of look at how you can do things differently. And I think that when it comes to policies, we should be constantly evolving as our world is changing, obviously, as you can imagine, right? The other thing would be including in-work daycares or childcare reimbursements for employees. If you don't want to pay for it up front, you can pay for it on the back end. I think just having options that might work for your particular company might be really important. And then also revamping HR policies for companies, whether it's private or public, based on the company need, and through surveys actually provided to employees about what they need without it negatively affecting their jobs. I'll just sort of wrap up here and say that, until 2019, FMLA was the only policy nationally that we had about leave from work. It was not paid. It covers a lot. It covers the actual employee. It covers their sick family members. It also covers the birth of a new child, as well as adoption in some states. I think that should be mandatory. And then, the Federal Employee Paid Leave Act actually it only includes 2.6 million workers. We've got 330 million people in the country. So is that a start? Yes. Is it enough? Absolutely not. It's really like the first, maybe it's, like the mortar that goes along with the brick, but it is not nearly enough to set a foundation for how we evaluate paid leave. And I will just make sure that I say that it only covers babies or newly adopted children under the age of 6, but there's no protection from your job for your job when you come back. And so we still have a long way to go, and we also have a lot of work to do as far as pay disparity when it comes to men and women, as well as minorities being paid less than white Americans. So with that, that's really all I have for today, but I think it's really important, get involved with your city on a local level. Try to get some, things passed, especially on a local level, about paid leave, maybe some new policies, maybe different ways to evaluate it. And I think together we can all make this happen. So I hope that everyone has a good day. Thank you so much for joining, and you guys take care.